Welcome to A Moment of Bach, where we take our favorite moments from the composer's vast musical output, just a minute's worth or even a few seconds, and show you why we think they are remarkable. We are your hosts, Alex and Christian Giebert. Today's moment is from BWV 61, Nun kommt der Heiden Heiland. Christian has chosen, for this year's look at this cantata, Movement 5, the soprano aria, Öffne, dich. In this short Advent cantata, where a young Bach experimented with a lot of different tones and sounds, the whole thing is structured as a sort of invitation, in this case for the Christ child, or Jesus, both as a child and as an adult in his life, but then also after his death to come back after the first few movements, including Come, Savior of the Gentiles, which is the namesake of the hymn setting of the first movement, Nun komm, der Heiden Heiland. We then get a famous passage, which I looked at in our very first year, in our second episode of this podcast, because it's so striking. A straight setting of the text of a verse from the book of Revelation. Siehe, ich stehe vor der Tür und klopfe an. Look, I stand before the door and knock. We get great repetition of knocking motif with pizzicato strings. Then, after that short and strange, lovely recitative sung by the bass, who in this case represents Jesus, we've heard him say, "If anyone ends up hearing my voice and opening the door, I will go in to him and keep the Lord's Supper with him, and he with me." Und die Tür auftun, zu dem werde ich eingehen. The evening meal, that is. Und das Abendmahl. So the metaphor here is, Jesus is at your door. Will you let him in? After this comes just the most transcendent, unassuming, peaceful, delicate soprano aria that I think maybe has ever been written. And that's the Öffne dich, mein ganzes Herze aria. Open yourself, my whole heart. Jesus comes and enters in. Even though I am but dust and earth, he will nevertheless not disdain me. He will look upon his delight in me, that I may become his dwelling place. Oh, how blessed will I be. The libretto is really nice here, and you can see this is typical of a lot of Bach cantatas. The libretto is by Erdmann Neumeister, and the fourth and fifth movements, it's just really nice poetry, the way they lead into each other. With Christ knocking at the door, and then in movement 5, the text of open my heart, open itself. Yeah, the text writer, Neumeister, is responding to the biblical quote from Revelation in that case. And then the speaker is also responding. The soprano is also saying, I want my heart to be opened. Because the bass, or Jesus, has just stood at the door and asked to be let in. The most striking thing about this aria to me is its apparent simplicity. I think this simplicity masks some really unusual meter stuff going on here at the beginning. You have simply just a bass line written out and then a singer, which means that the musical score is really small. There's no solo treble instrument with what we would call an obligato part. There's only a cello part written out, and the organ we hear here in the Netherlands Bach Society recording is merely just playing harmony above that. I want you to think about this. Where is the first beat? Where is the downbeat? Where is the structure of the bar? Is it like 1, 2, 3? Is it 1, 2, 3, 4? How many beats are in each measure? It's a exercise that shouldn't be too hard normally, but in this case, it's very strange. Kind of sounds like it could be 1 and 2. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. But then that doesn't work anymore. Because in 3, you're not going to end on a conclusive note. That's going to be on the downbeat. Okay, well, maybe it's 4. I like it as 4 and 1. And then that's how I originally heard it. 4 and 1, 2. Yes, because that puts that on 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And then it lands. That would work. That is how I heard it. Yes. When I was listening to it. Öffne dich. And then I thought she was 2 and 3. Yeah. 2 and 3, which would work. Yeah. He would, just a half bar. He would put something on that half bar. Okay. But then later that just wasn't working. Yeah. And my brain was getting messed up. Yeah. Which I think is because Bach purposefully wrote this introduction and the entire first half, the entire A section of this aria, in sort of a floating void of no rhythm. Yep. And the actual notation is in 3 beats per measure, and it's rest 2 and 3, and 2 and 3 and 1, and 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. And then Öffne dich is 2 and 3 again, so it does match. Mm-hmm. And the number of measures is 6 measures for that first phrase and the introduction, which is a little bit unusual as well. Yeah, it's also compounded by the fact that the middle section of this aria is in 4/4. The middle section is in 4/4, yeah. Although it's marked with a different tempo. And it's a little bit unusual, I think. I guess just by the numbers, most of his arias would have a B section that stayed in the same affect or tempo. But we'll get to that last line with O wie selig in a minute. Certainly, even though he likes to go in interesting directions harmonically and introduce new material in the B section, he usually keeps it in the same time signature. Mm-hmm. That you could say. It's definitely a majority of his arias are like that. So this is unique in that way. And a lot of his B sections of his arias, especially in his later Leipzig years, are very strange harmonically, and this one just isn't. But it's metrically different. The first line, Öffne dich, mein ganzes Herz, has a really great ornamentation on the word ganzes. Whole? Yeah. Full, right? Whole as in whole heart. Open yourself, my whole heart. This is the thing about German syntax that makes for some really nice poetic features, when it comes to talking about yourself. Öffne dich, mein ganzes Herz. It'd be like in English you might just say I open my heart or open my heart or something. It might be more like me, but instead of you. In German it's you. Dich means you. Mm-hmm. The heart. Yourself. Yeah. So you're talking to your heart. You're saying, open yourself, my heart. And it just becomes a little bit more of a dialogue between the person and the heart, which is kind of neat poetically, I think. And the analogy of Jesus coming and entering in my heart is that the heart is God's temple. And that's solidified in the second last line of text, which is that I may become his dwelling place. Mm. Yeah. It's really interesting how Bach treats the musical metaphor of this, because it happens a lot in Lutheran theology where You talk about your heart being the place that God dwells. That's a very touchy-feely, like, easy thing to understand. Like, Jesus is in my heart.
Right.
But then there's a duality to it that's a little confusing. There's also, like, the dwelling place of, like, the Most High God is also supposed to be heaven. And then heaven is also supposed to be a dwelling place that you're supposed to want. But also, it's not really like a shiny, faraway place, but it comes to earth. So there's a lot of complexity to it than just like Jesus is in my heart and I want to go to heaven, I guess.
Right. And I think just like ultimately the poetic nature of a lot of theological ideas is like what's appealing to people about religion, in general. But then about specifically like Christianity, you can read all the doctrine books that you want, but ultimately these ideas are not natural. Like they don't make sense in the natural world. That's part of why it's supernatural. And so the ability to sort of be poetic and kind of have these floaty ideas, but they all kind of work together still. The idea that Christ is in your heart while also is reigning on the right hand of God from heaven. These are all things that like coexist in Christian theology.
And it's Bach's job to tie them together musically.
Well, and that he's in the evening meal too, the supper, the Last Supper, which is also part of this cantata. That Christ is in that meal is another aspect.
Yeah, the thematic work that has been done before Bach wrote this is just a great start because everything works together. Everything's about Christ coming to you, but just in all the different ways that he does so.
Advent, right? This is an Advent cantata.
Yes, that's first Sunday of Advent.
Yeah, so it's perfectly suited for Advent, about Christ coming to you.
And we heard a triumphant French overture style, like the entrance of a king type of music for the opening movement of this cantata already, if we were hearing it perform it. We've heard a narrator, the tenor soloist, talk about the shining of him coming with the full blessing of the gospel. We've then, right afterwards, heard that tenor soloist sing, inviting Jesus to come to the church, almost like a blessing of the new year. The word is grant a blessed new year. Then we had Jesus standing at our door and plucking strings to knock. And now we have the response. We often say that in this podcast, that one thing that sets Bach apart from other composers, not just in his time, but also especially in more recent times, is that there is a complete lack of personal ego apparent in his music. There's just in the music itself, there's just no hint of that. The closest he gets is like last week's very florid and flourishy Fantasia. But even that, it's just not it. Even the most subtle of Beethoven is like a raging bull compared to that. It's just completely not part of Bach's music. You could argue for better or worse. I think better.
Yeah.
But
this is such a tender moment here.
This is even on another level.
Yeah.
This is so almost pure sounding. The fact that there is no apparent meter at the beginning, I think, helps it feel floaty. It almost exists in the sky. It's not grounded in a way. There's no human pulse of dance to it. You couldn't even figure out where the downbeat is at the beginning.
There's also no grounding of putting the bass and cello together here. That's a Netherlands Bach Society choice.
Yeah, just cello.
But it's actually, that might be in the score now that I think about it. I don't know. Just cello, so thinner sound. A little more dainty, a little more vulnerable sounding.
It is in the manuscript.
Oh, it does say cello. Okay,
yeah. Now that I'm looking, it says aria, soprano, solo, and violoncello.
And that makes sense because we say with the cantatas, there's usually an instrumental solo or section, but in this one, that is the cello. It's the continuo and the instrumental solo, and there's specifically not a bass doubling at the lower octave. Yeah. So then you get, as you say, just simple sound. Probably most people would do exactly what Netherlands Bach does, which is just using only organ which of course is a quiet organ sound. As the realization of the continuo part. It's so tender, it's so sweet. You know, these cantatas always follow a very deliberate format. They almost feel like mini church services, right? You start with like an invocation. That's your big French overture of this cantata. Then there's like the word, which is given, which is Christ at the door, and then the personal response, the prayer. That's this. This is the heart of the cantata.
Yeah.
It's usually a tender moment like this. And then at the end you have something that seems like a doxology, which is exactly what we heard. And so Bach always does this. He puts the heart of his cantata here, right near the end. It's usually like a soprano solo or a tenor solo or something. You could argue that
sometimes it's in the middle.
Yeah.
In his later Leipzig, I think he often likes to put
that's true
the middle movement as the centerpiece thematically.
That's mein Herz schwimmt in Blut.
Yeah,
that one is like that. But you can always look at the time codes on the videos to see where Bach spends the most time, and this aria is the longest. This or the tenor aria, but I think this one's longer.
It is,
and it's due to the tempo and stuff. And if you look at the score, you have to scroll way down to the bottom, and this is right at the bottom of the score. And the score, this thing barely takes up any space at all because, as we said, it's so thinly scored. But as far as timing goes, this is the heart of the cantata and takes up a big chunk of time and is the emotional core of the piece.
Mm-hmm. In the manuscript, which is a big piece of paper size, but in the manuscript, the top of that page is like the second half of the recit, the plucking one beforehand. And then in the most modern scores, it's just 8.5 by 11.
Yeah, it's one page out of like 16 pages, and yet it's the heart of it.
My particular favorite thing is an ornament, just one simple thing, one simple choice by Bach that's written this way, a written ornament. And it's the first one on Ganzes. We have that word whole that we mentioned. The soprano of this, by the way, has got to be the right kind. You can't have a big voice here and a full soprano. I don't think
a big
that
dramatic soprano.
That wouldn't work. So this is
that's cool. I never really noticed that.
Zsuzsi Tóth, the soprano soloist in Netherlands Bach Society, for this one.
I didn't notice the ornamentation, how it lands on that B. So anticipation on the B. That's cool.
It's interesting because you think it almost looks wrong. It looks like it should be bum 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 da 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 da. That's what it
right
seems would be the most obvious choice.
Yep.
But it's bum bum dun da 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 da, which is more interesting. And also a little more off-kilter, going along with the idea of the lack of firm ground here and the just more supplicant, prayerful nature of the singer as the soul, human soul.
Yeah.
And it happens again on the next Ganzes, although a little different. But then you have a really great second line. Jesus comes and enters in. It's not open yourself, my whole heart. I hope Jesus will come in. It's open yourself, my whole heart. He does come in.
Yeah.
That is joyfully sung by the soprano, especially the second time it's sung, where the phrase starts on a surprising high G, which is a seventh away from the last note, which is also unexpected.
Yeah.
As you said, we move into a different meter, which is unusual. There's still sort of a lack of where the real pulse is. And then, all of a sudden, the cello enters just this flow of, this sequential flow of stepwise motion, mostly going down, a little up, little down. When it starts, it sounds like a downbeat. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da. But it's not. It's beat 2. 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 1. And then O wie selig is written as 2, a 3, and 4, which is also unexpected metrically.
Yeah, almost everything starts on beat 2 in this, actually.
Mm-hmm. Oh, how blessed will I be. So there's this just transcendent passage that's only a few seconds long. Oh, how blessed, oh, how blessed, oh, how blessed will I be. It winds down to a moment of partial stability until we finally get to go back and offer that prayer one more time by doing a da capo, which means go back to the beginning, and we get to hear that first section again. I'm changing my mind about my moment. I think it's this. My favorite moment is the opening flood of light coming out for this O wie selig, this blessed thing, and these this cello 16th notes, which is sort of just phrased perfectly by this cellist. I think it's Lucia Swartz, who appears in a lot of other Netherlands Bach Society videos. Yeah. And now, oh, how blessed will I be. If you enjoyed this week's Moment of Bach, you can look at our previous seasons. Right near the beginning of each season, we talk about this very cantata, the different movements from BWV 61. So Christian, next year, I bet we'll revisit it again. One last time, because there's only one more left. Maybe we just start over and go back to the beginning.
I don't know. Yeah.
I'll pick a different thing to do.
Yeah. But that's far in the future. For now, we just hope that you, again, tell a friend. We mentioned this last week, but yeah, tell a friend about A Moment of Bach. We're seeing our listenership grow, and that's really cool to see. But we want to see it reach an even wider audience. And subscribe to A Moment of Bach on your podcast player, and you won't miss any episodes.
So what will we be looking at next week?
BWV 245, St. John Passion.
Good choice for the Lenten season.
Yeah. I mean, it's a monumental work.
You know, for the local people that are listening in the Southern California area, Concordia University Irvine is putting on the St. John Passion, directed by Dr. Michael Bush. That's on Palm Sunday, April 13th at 3.
Yep, and to prepare for being in the audience for that concert, I've been studying this work a lot recently, and I want to choose for our Moment of Bach for next week the third movement, which is the first short chorale movement, which of course Bach likes to sprinkle into his passions. I mean, sprinkle in is not actually true. It's not like they're sprinkled in. They're actually important to the core themes of the work, but it's movement 3. So that is O große Liebe, O great love.
I'm excited for that too. I will be singing in the tenor section for that. It's at St. Andrew's Presbyterian in Newport Beach. Just Google Concordia University Irvine Music Events. Check it out.
Yeah, and also, you know, we talk about one of our very, very favorite cantatas ever. We've talked about it so much. That's BWV 106. Gottes Zeit ist die allerbeste Zeit.
That's the cantata.
That's right. And I bring that up because at my church there will be a concert of that on March 23rd. Again, local listeners to Southern California, hope you can come to that. 4 p.m. We'll link that in the description. We'll be at St. John's Lutheran Church in Orange, California.
Until next time, enjoy those moments.